Walrond.
I want to say
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, may I please take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to the Senior Minister within the Office of the President with responsibility for finance and his team for their dedication and hard work in preparing this budget that sees Guyanese securing a prosperous and sustainable future. Mr. Speaker, Budget 2025 comes as we approach the 5-year anniversary of the ascension of our government to office. And one cannot help but contrast the performance of the PPPC administration with that of our predecessors, who now occupy the other side of this honorable house. Mr. Speaker, unlike that of the other side, our record has been one of delivery. It has been a record of achievement, a record of competence in execution, and of promises kept. Mr. Speaker, I list in bemusement at our previous speaker, Ms. Amanza Walton Desir, honorable member, who has left, has decided not to give us the courtesy after standing up on their soapbox, throwing everything at the Guyanese people, everything onto the wall to see what will stick, stoking xenophobic sentiments, trying to create fear for the people with allegations that have no solutions, offering solutions to imagine ghosts and fears. Mr. Speaker, the truth is that most of the Venezuelans who are here are of Guyanese descent. That is the truth.
that's correct.
But, Mr. Speaker, I wish to speak to what is the undercurrent of the honorable member's presentation. The sounding brass and tinkling cymbals, vacuous, empty. And I wish, Mr. Speaker, for the people of Guyana, to when they take it down a notch, and there was a reason why I came and started at a level tone, because we need to take down the rhetoric a notch and listen to the substance. It is empty, vacuous, nothing there, Mr. Speaker. Nothing, nothing of substance.
A lot of nothingness.
And some of these criticisms, Mr. Speaker, as the honorable member Desir has raised in the House and outside the House, tells us a story of who they really are. There's a reason why they have to come here and flay their hands and jump up on the table and do all of that. It is creating, you have to create a mirage as if we are doing something, because they've done nothing. They're trying to move themselves out of inertia, but it's not going to happen, Mr. Speaker. They have done nothing. They have no solutions. Nothing. So, Mr. Speaker, the honorable member, Amanza Desir, argues, like most of our colleagues have, that it's not reasonable to compare their performance under the APNU in 2015 to 2020, their performance without oil resources, to our performance in the context of oil resources. And Mr. Speaker, I want us to take the time to delve into these kinds of arguments, because the Guyanese people deserve to hear truth, they deserve to hear well thought out arguments, and they deserve to hear substance. The honorable member this year said outside of the House, and I quote, "How much a government gives to its people, it's directly related to how much it has to give. and went on to say that our government has, and I quote, unprecedented fiscal space. Fiscal space. This sounds plausible enough on its face, Mr. Speaker, but let us examine this argument a little more closely. Mr. Speaker, before 2015, without even the prospect of oil resources within the fiscal space available, the PPPC government found the money to pay cash grants of $15,000 per year to school children. The APNU-AFC came into office riding the wave of first oil discovery in 2015 and took that grant away. Mr. Speaker, without oil money or the anticipation of oil money, the PPPC government found the money to pay a 1-month bonus to the discipline services. The APNU-AFC came into office and took that bonus away. Without oil resources, sir, the PPPC instituted subsidies on water bills for pensioners. The APNU took those subsidies away. Without our resources, we found the money to subsidize electricity for pensioners, $30,000 per year. The APNU-AFC took that subsidy away. To add insult to injury, sir, the APNU-AFC, after removing all of those benefits, gave themselves a 50% rise in salary and told the people of Guyana that they had no apologies to make. So, Mr. Speaker, while the argument that they make that we have oil and they didn't may appear plausible on the surface, we did all these things without oil, and hence this examination of their record tells a different story. Know them by their deeds. So when the honorable member like Amanza Nazir comes and flays and pretends to be virtuous and they have all the answers, know them by their deeds. They have no credibility.
Know them by their deeds.
The honorable member Amanza Nazir tilted at the $10,000 health care voucher, which, as the minister responsible for finance says, is intended to cover a basic menu of medical tests. The honorable member says that this is nothing but a transfer to the private sector because one has to take the voucher to a private institution. Mr. Speaker, for the life of me, try as I might, I could not comprehend the logic in their criticism. Mr. Speaker, given that tests are free in the public health system, where else would a citizen take such a voucher? As far as I understand it, Mr. Speaker, no one has to do anything in respect of the medical care voucher. A member of the public can choose to have the test done in the public health system, in which case, as I said, it is free and no voucher is needed. If, however, a citizen chooses to access the private health care system for whatever reason, we are saying to that citizen, here we will defray some of that cost for you. It is the same way that the Because We Care cash grant is extended to every child, regardless of whether that child is in the public or private education system. But we don't hear the same criticism about the education grant, Mr. Speaker. Is it because they have a different perception of who education providers are than they have of medical service providers? And in any case, the opposition never concedes, or maybe they don't understand, that businesses have costs. They carry on as though every dollar of revenue constitutes a profit. For them, the medical service provider doesn't have to use supplies to conduct tests. They don't have to pay rent. They don't have overhead. They don't have to pay staff who work. No, if you listen to the opposition, every dollar of revenue that goes to the private sector goes straight into the pocket of some businessman or woman, but the goods and services are provided to the customer by magic. But this is the mentality of the opposition, Mr. Speaker. It is a zero-sum mentality. They can't conceive of public and private healthcare systems complementing each other, with each occupying an appropriate place in the national fabric. They want to take us back to the days where there was no private sector, where the state, according to them, must control the commanding heights of the economy, where the state dominated all aspects of people's lives, where the state, their state, did everything and did it badly. Mr. Speaker, I also wish to thank the Honorable Member Jurita Finance, who opened the debate for the opposition last Friday. I think the Honorable Member did the nation a great service as well in her presentation. I say this, Mr. Speaker, in this context, the Honorable Member is amongst the new guard in the ranks of the opposition. She, like the Honorable Member Walton Desir, is of their new generation and represents the future of their party. So it is instructive for us to have a demonstration, sir, of where our friends in the opposition are headed, as illustrated by their best and brightest. Mr. Speaker, there is a Yiddish word which I think aptly describes the presentation of the Honorable Member, Ms. Finance. That word, sir, is chutzpah. Translated to English means audacity or temerity. That word comes to mind, sir, because it is the height of audacity for someone who is part and parcel of a party that told people to go on the street corner and sell plant and chips and dog food to make a living, to come here and say in this honorable house that service jobs in the hospitality industry are beneath the dignity of Guyanese. Let me hasten to say, Mr. Speaker, that on this side of the house, we have absolutely no problem with people who sell dog food on the corner. They are doing honest work, and honest work is dignified work. So we don't have a single problem with those hardworking people, Mr. Speaker. What we have a problem with, sir, is the temerity of people like the Honorable Member Finance, whose government not only told Guyanese to go make their living selling on the street corner, but imposed a tax on top of them in the bargain. You will remember, sir, that huckster's tax as one of the more than 200 regressive taxes that this administration has removed. And then they come to this house disparaging jobs which offer steady employment, offer opportunities for advancement, as well as inclusion in the social safety net through the NIS scheme. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member, who is in the vanguard of the opposition's new generation, told us that tourism makes us a nation of servants. Mr. Speaker, this is the voice of the opposition's future, giving us the identical argument of the PNC from days past. So it appears, Mr. Speaker, that notwithstanding the new look, the new people, the new day, this new day, it's the same old tired philosophy on the other side. But we must thank the Honorable Member, Ms. Finance, for reminding us of who they are, because Guyanese will be making an important choice this year. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member's presentation last Friday was emblematic of the particularly insidious way in which the opposition tries to demonize the government and the private sector. What they do is focus on the biggest and most visible businesses, those businesses which by their very nature are in a position to make major investments. They then claim that the private sector only comprises these businesses, and then they say to their supporters, the government is giving all of the money to the private sector. And again, they represent the situation as though private sector revenues are one and the same as private sector profits. The Honorable Ms. Finance gave us a masterclass in this type of subterfuge last Friday, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member, in attempting to ridicule the thousands of jobs created in the hospitality sector, said that we are telling people to work in hotels that they can't afford to stay in. And after she was done in here, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member took to social media and posted the nightly rates of the top 3 hotels as if to make her point. Yes, the hashtag was "I said what I said." She doubled down. It moved me to make the point that the Honorable Member appears to have no understanding of the scope of the hospitality sector. I would invite the Honorable Member to take a trip to her hometown of Bartica and visit the 13 hotels operating there, one of which recently undertook an expansion. I would invite the honorable member to speak with those hotel owners and reconsider whether she wants to come to this house to disparage the hotel business. Mr. Speaker, as part of our evaluation of the hospitality sector, the Guyana Tourism Authority monitors 95 hotels located in almost every region of this country. 95, Mr. Speaker, 95. They talk about comparing oil and non-oil, but they don't find it utterly ridiculous to select the top 3 of almost 100 and hold them out as characterizing the sector. Mr. Speaker, of the 92 hotels that were surveyed in our monitoring program for 2024, 14 were in Region 2, 4 were in Region 3, 31 in Region 4, 11 in Region 6, 13 of them are in Region 7, where the honorable member hails from, 8 were in Region 9, and another 8 in Region 10. So, Mr. Speaker, the hospitality sector is much more diverse than the honorable member imagines. And for good measure, I would say that the average rates of hotels outside of the business sector are as low as $15 per night in Region 1, and with a national average in 2024 of $25,000 per night, a fraction of the rates that the honorable members choose to use to drive her narrative. And for the honorable members' information, Guyanese can and do patronize these establishments. By the way, Mr. Speaker, and by the way, many of these are small businesses, establishments with less than 25 rooms. I mention this because they also seem to have a coordinated message that we are doing nothing for small businesses. Mr. Speaker, I have to remind them that we brought into law the 20% window for small businesses in government procurement. That is how we could award over $25 billion to almost 2,500 small contractors, many of them first-time awardees, and 30% of them women or women-owned. But to return to the hospitality sector, Mr. Speaker, I wish to make this final point. Close to 5 years ago, in the height of the worst pandemic the world has seen in a century, when global travel was at a virtual standstill, we had the vision to see beyond the horizon and recognize what Guyana could be in the future and what we would need to realize that potential. That is why, Mr. Speaker, back in 2020, even in those circumstances and in the context where we did not have a history and culture of tourism like our Caribbean states, we invited expressions of interest for the construction of hotels to carry major globally recognized brands. And if you recall, sir, we were wrongly criticized for doing so. We were criticized for facilitating investment in hotels when no one was traveling. And the criticism then was that we were building hotels that no one would stay in. Predictably, Mr. Speaker, the naysayers were proven wrong because in 2023, occupancy in the business segment was 85%. And 2024, the occupancy level in that segment was 88%. In the smallest segment of the sector, occupancy levels also increased. At these occupancy levels and average room rates reported for 2024, estimate of the sector revenues approached $65 million in 2024. That's over 13.6 billion Guyanese dollars. Collectively, Mr. Speaker, almost 22,000 people are employed directly or indirectly in the hospitality sector across the country. And so, Mr. Speaker, having been proven wrong in their dire predictions regarding economic viability of their industry, their position has now shifted that their new argument, as the Honorable Practice said, is that their work in the industry is unfit for Guyanese. There is no principle and no consistency in their argument, Mr. Speaker. Nevertheless, Mr. Speaker, because of our policies, the private sector has gained confidence and is responding with investment. For hotels, we have seen close to $35 billion of investment. Lodges have seen $21 million in investment. Resorts, $200 million. Local airlines, $600 million, malls, $12 billion, with a total investment by the private sector of over 50 billion in the hospitality sector alone. Between 2020 and 2024, the industry added 4 new hotels and a total of 561 rooms to the national room stock. And when we say private sector, Mr. Speaker, I mean the private sector, including those small and medium businesses that the opposition doesn't see because their existence doesn't suit their narrative. Mr. Speaker, of the 561 new rooms, 81 of those were in the segment of small operators, 35 in Henrietta, Region 2, 34 in Linden, Region 10, and 6 in Bartica, Region 7, home of the honorable member who says that hotel work is unworthy of Guyanese. And Mr. Speaker, I should point out that these hotels employ people. They have managerial and supervisory staff, they have clerical staff, and they have operational staff. Many of these roles require 24-hour coverage. Thus, you may find 3 persons employed in 8-hour shifts to cover a role. So, Mr. Speaker, when you include ancillary service, I repeat, almost 22,000 people are employed in the hospitality sector. And this employment follows the more than 1,500 jobs that were created during the construction phase of these various facilities. We promised to create jobs, and we have surpassed our promise of 50,000 jobs for our people, Mr. Speaker. And in so doing, restored hope and dignity to the thousands of our Guyanese brothers and sisters the AP and UAFC placed on the breadline. That's our record, competence and delivery. Mr. Speaker, we see the same playbook when it comes to the construction sector. They pick out the major contracts, designate those contractors as the private sector, and allege that all the money is awarded to them. But, Mr. Speaker, just over 3 months ago, on the 11th of October, on these very premises, I was here when we awarded 673 contracts to small contractors with a total value of $11.5 billion for building community roads and other infrastructure in Region 4. That exercise was preceded by one in October 8, 2024 in Berbice, where we awarded just about $7 billion for community works to 389 small contractors in Region 6. In Region 5, 108 small contractors were awarded $1.5 billion in contracts for upgrade of community roads. In April 2024, we awarded $1 billion in contracts in Sophia, right here in Georgetown, to persons from the community to upgrade roads and infrastructure. In Linden, 325 contracts totaling $4.2 billion were issued on November 23, 2024 to small contractors for the upgrade of community roads in that municipality. We followed up on December 3rd with additional 94 contracts in Linden, again issued to small contractors for road works, and another 46 contracts for drainage works. In total, Mr. Speaker, in 2024, well over 2,000 small contractors, ordinary people all over this country, were awarded over $27 billion in contracts to upgrade and enhance infrastructure in the communities. Mr. Speaker, and I speak only of the small business contracts awarded through the sector of public works. Many of these people are first-time contractors, and absent our deliberate policy of facilitation and community empowerment, they would not have had the opportunities that they do today. So it is incomprehensible, Mr. Speaker, that members on the other side can have the temerity to come to this honorable house and say with a straight face that our budgets have nothing in them for the ordinary average Guyanese. Mr. Speaker, I have made this point before, but it bears being made again. Every child who attends a public school and receives instruction gets a benefit from $175 billion that is programmed for education in this budget. Mr. Speaker, the thousands of people who go to a public hospital or a community health center and benefit from free care and treatment benefit from the $143 billion allocated to health in the budget. For small businesses who they say we do nothing for, the accelerated depreciation schedule for capital investments made by poultry farmers is nothing because small farmers mean nothing to them. The Removal of VAT on agricultural machinery means nothing for them. I suppose they don't consider small farms to be small businesses.
They don't care.
Mr. Speaker, do small businesses not benefit from our maintaining the zero rating of excise tax on petroleum products? This measure removes an estimated 90 billion in costs throughout the supply chain. And this benefits not only small businesses, Mr. Speaker, it benefits everyone. Lowering fuel costs lowers inland freight so as to reduce prices in the shops and markets. It lowers direct costs for consumers who own motor vehicles. Our taxi fares remain low in part because of that measure, and it lowers electricity costs, which every consumer and business benefits from in terms of lower light bills. Mr. Speaker, it is easy to do as the opposition does, to criticize these measures because they know that the true effect of these measures will only be felt if those subsidies are removed. And that will never be done by this government. But make no mistake, sir, they will remove those subsidies and place the burdens on the citizens' back if they ever get their hands on the levers of power again. Just look at their record.
That's correct, because that's what they do.
Mr. Speaker, there is 800 million program for small businesses in the agro-processing sector. This is in addition to the 3 billion program for facilities in Region 2, 3, 4, and 10 for small businesses operating in the light, medium, and processing industries. In Region 2, on the Niming Industrial Estate is 95% complete. I will be ready for rollout in the first quarter of 2025, offering 90 plots for prospective businesses. Development at the York Industrial Estate in Region 10 is progressing and is scheduled for completion in 2025. Mr. Speaker, these initiatives build upon our successes with the business incubators in Lethem and Belvedere, which gives me another chance to address the oil versus non-oil comparison argument. Mr. Speaker, you might recall that in August 2020, both locations, Lethem and Belvedere, were mere shells, despite representations by the AP and UAFC that they were in a position to begin operations. There was a public launch in Belvedere and an extensive media tour in Lethem, which included several business people from neighboring Brazil. But it was all a mirage, Mr. Speaker, a pretense, the kind of subterfuge that the AP and UAFC excels in. Despite the fanfare, no equipment was installed, not a pod was occupied, and nothing was produced. Today, Mr. Speaker, residents of Region 6 and 9 have access to state-of-the-art agro-processing facilities which provide a direct benefit to the agro-processing sector. As a result, we have real production of value-added items which benefit the respective communities. Last year, Mr. Speaker, more than 8,000 pounds of indigenous flowers and powders, almost 70,000 sachets of herbal teas were produced at the Berbice incubator, and almost 5,000 sachets of tea, along with large quantities of dried pepper and dried fruits, were produced at the Lethem Business Incubator Center. Especially in the Lethem area, without those facilities, Mr. Speaker, much of those produce would go to waste. With the successful completion of this project, sir, the small farmers from the Lethem environs can preserve their produce and earn more revenues from the resulting value-added products that are placed in retail outlets throughout the country. And that is the difference between the PPPC and the AP and UAFC, sir. Here you have the same project, different administrations, different results. So this has nothing to do with access to oil revenues versus lack of oil revenues, Mr. Speaker. It is a matter of the contrast between competence and ineptitude. Mr. Speaker, no amount of oil money can buy them competence. Moving on with small business, Mr. Speaker, I have to make the point that support to small business is not merely grants and loans. A critically important support measure is training to build capacity. This year, we plan to train an additional 3,000 small business owners, adding to the 10,000 who have already benefited from training in areas like marketing fundamentals, business planning, and financial management. Mr. Speaker, I already alluded to the fact that in the construction sector, over close to 2,500 contractors received over 25 billion in small contracts. It is this kind of training, especially in planning and financial management, that enhances the capabilities of small businesses to allow them to benefit from these larger government contracts that we have been awarding in the construction and other sectors. So you can see, Mr. Speaker, our interventions are integrated into a cohesive whole that is designed to bring about inclusive, sustainable growth and development. So our support is not just limited to small grants. What we are doing also is facilitating alternative sources of financing and revenue for small businesses. For these businesses, Mr. Speaker, access to finance has been enhanced with the Security Interest in Movable Property Bill. An enhancement of revenue drove the institution of legal frameworks such as the 20% procurement set aside and the Local Content Act. The local content, which because of the constraints of time does not allow me to elaborate on its successes, but suffice it to say that in procurement alone in the oil and gas sector, we have over 1,000 Guyanese small businesses actively participating. Turning to the wider tourism sector, Mr. Speaker, here our performance continues to improve substantially as our policies continue to place Guyana on the map as a sought-after travel destination. A sum of $719 million is budgeted for 2025 to build on this progress. With recognition in media and travel magazines too numerous to mention, please permit me, sir, to list a few highlights. In 2024, Guyana received the International Travel Award for Destination of the Year, Ecological Tourism, from the Pacific Travel Writers Association. The Guyana Tourism Authority received silver place in the 4th edition of the WTM Latin America Responsible Tourism Award 2024 in the category of Best Initiatives for Indigenous Tourism and their Traditional Communities. Guyana was nominated as Green Destination of the Year at the Caribbean Green Awards and for the World Travel Award, South America's Responsible Tourism Award in 2024. The Iracama River Lodge earned a nomination as South America's leading eco lodge at the WTM Responsible Awards in 2024. These awards and nominations constitute growing international recognition of our credentials for sustainable, eco-friendly tourism, our commitment to our indigenous communities, and our capacity to provide world-class experiences in harmony with nature. Our air connectivity has seen a significant boost with multiple new routes and airlines entering the market. The launch of direct flights between Guyana and Grenada by Caribbean Airways and the Caribbean Airlines introducing direct flights to Suriname have made regional travel more accessible. International connectivity has also improved, with United Airlines launching a 4 times weekly service from Houston, Texas to Georgetown, and Avianca Airlines commencing direct flights between Guyana and Bogota, Colombia.
Honorable member, we will need an extension for you to continue to conclude.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask that the honorable member be given 5 minutes to conclude his presentation.
Thank you, Minister Teixeira. Honorable member, you may continue and conclude in 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, our coordinated and purposeful work has resulted in visitor arrivals setting an all-time record of 371,000 in the year 2024. This is more than 4 times the level of 82,000 recorded in 2020. It exceeds by over 16% last year's record-setting performance of 319,000. In total, visitor arrivals increased by more than 50,000 persons in 2024 as compared to 2023. This exemplifies what we mean, Mr. Speaker, when we say we have a record of competence and delivery. Mr. Speaker, we have $1.2 billion allocated to standardization and standards development for 2025. These activities have an integral role in developing our competitiveness. In this regard, the GNBS is one of those organizations that has an unobtrusive but critical role to play. It may not be widely known, but GNBS also plays a critical role in the petroleum sector. The Oil and Gas Department of the Bureau monitors operations on the FPSO. GNBS inspectors are stationed to oversee the custody transfer process and to ensure precision and accuracy of the transaction records relating to oil production and lifts. The GNBS is also responsible for sampling crude stored in cargo tanks to determine quality. You would no doubt readily appreciate, sir, that the quality of a lift will influence its price. Mr. Speaker, altogether, our inspectors aboard the FPSOs conduct more than 3,000 high-precision tests each year as they work on the front line to safeguard our oil revenues. They are our first line of assurance with respect to the integrity of these revenues, and it is not inappropriate to recognize their otherwise unseen and unsung role in protecting our patrimony. Such is the capability of the Bureau, Mr. Speaker, that they now provide testing and technical assistance services not only to local and foreign-owned businesses here in Guyana, but also to entities in several countries of the CARICOM region. Mr. Speaker, we can speak proudly of these things because our record is one of competence and delivery. In every sector, our approach is purposeful and results-oriented. The contrast with the record of our friends on the other side could not be starker. Mr. Speaker, I had cause on a previous occasion to go through in detail a number of promises made on the other side in their 2015 manifesto, none of which they kept. This year, as we approach elections, we are going to hear them again, promising Guyanese the moon, the stars, and the skies. They have already started, Mr. Speaker, with a pamphlet containing a slew of promises. And then the honorable member, Mr. Holder, mounted off a few of them in the House today. Once again, Mr. Speaker, you have to marvel at the audacity. Imagine, Mr. Speaker, they who imposed a value-added tax on electricity are now promising subsidies on electricity. They who imposed VAT on water are now promising the Guyanese people subsidies on water. They who took away the bonus from discipline services are now promising 35% increase in salaries for the $1,000 a year cash grant for school children are now promising $150,000 per year. The height of audacity, Mr. Speaker. They who promised a double old age pension in 2015 and didn't do it are promising again to double the old age pension. You have to marvel at the chispa, Mr. Speaker, at the audacity. In the face of their record, they come to the Guyanese people with a straight face, repeating these promises. I did know that all of the members on the other side were laughing when Mr. Holder was giving out the list of promises, and some did appear to be shocked. Then, for good measure, they promised free university education, which we have already announced last year. They have some vague promise of mortgage assistance when since 2013, the PPPC government introduced a mortgage interest relief program. Mr. Speaker, after ridiculing the part-time worker scheme from its inception, in this year, the opposition suddenly declares its support for the program, and they're promising to raise the part-time worker stipend by 25% from $40,000 to $50,000 a month. They are promising to cut taxes and increase spending. They criticize our payment of $100,000 for every newborn, but they are promising $150,000 per year every year for every child under 16. They are promising subsidies on almost everything under the sun. And on top of all that extra in this expenditure, Mr. Speaker, they are promising to cut taxes. But the Guyanese people know better. They know that the AP and UAFC never met a tax they wouldn't raise. They never met a benefit that they wouldn't remove, or never an election that they wouldn't rig. It's easy to make promises when you don't intend to keep them. It's their MO to raise taxes, snatch the benefits from the hardworking Guyanese, and then when the people reject them, try to steal their vote. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the achievements and measures I have outlined today are at the heart of the transformation that is taking place in Guyana under the stewardship of our PPPC government. We have worked tirelessly to create an environment where all our people thrive and prosper, from Region 1 to Region 10. Guyana's economic future looks incredibly bright as we continue to make strategic investments in infrastructure, human capital, tourism development, and support for local businesses, among other areas. And as we continue to work towards that future, we are committed to building on our successes and ensuring that every citizen of Guyana benefits from the opportunities created in our new economy. Budget 2025 maintains the platform for continued growth, resilience, and prosperity, and I wholeheartedly commend it to this honorable House and to the Guyanese people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.